The sister in question chose her paternal grandfather over their biological father to walk her down the aisle at her wedding, despite years of neglect from both parents. The author is 35 years old with two siblings, a sister aged 29 and a brother aged 23. The parents are described as extremely religious and conservative, and the author recalls that they were concerned about their public image during their upbringing. The parents were disappointed when the author and their sister were born, as they had wanted a son. The author was conceived before her sister, and the parents contemplated terminating the pregnancy. My grandmother informed me that, when I was just 2 years old, my mother sent me away to stay with her, as she was experiencing depression. Having me around my grandparents was a positive experience. My grandfather patiently taught me how to ride a bike, and I still remember the thrill of pedaling on my own for the first time. Those bike riding days created a strong bond between us that lasted a long time. My grandmother taught me all about gardening, and I learned how to take care of plants. It is evident that the act of observing flowers in bloom and the experience of having a small piece of nature in one's life can be beneficial. The skills that she shared during those gardening days continue to be of assistance to me even today, throughout this period. It is noteworthy that my parents never once came to visit me until I reached the age of 7. This was despite the fact that people began to question them about why I was not staying with them. They then proceeded to drag me back from my grandparents to stay with them, despite my protests. It is clear that I would have loved to continue to stay with my grandparents, as they brought stability and warmth into my life. After 3 years, my parents were overjoyed to learn that I was no longer staying with them. They were expecting another child, but when they discovered it would be another girl, they were disappointed once more. Interestingly, however, they were somewhat more relaxed about this than they had been when I was expecting a child. Fortunately, my sister did not have to endure the same difficulties I did, and she lived with our parents throughout her childhood. The differences in the way my parents treated me and my sister were striking. For instance, I was expected to assist my mother with numerous household tasks and responsibilities, which often felt like an endless list of duties. The list of tasks that I was required to complete in order to meet their expectations was extensive. However, when it came to my sister, the rules seemed to be somewhat more relaxed. She did not have the same level of pressure, and my parents were more lenient with her chores. It appeared that they had learned from their earlier parenting experiences and decided to take a different approach with her. Another example was the way they handled our education. When I was in school, there was immense pressure on me to excel in every subject. My parents had high expectations, and any deviation from top grades was met with disappointment. They enrolled me in various extracurricular activities, encouraging me to excel in all endeavors. Conversely, when my sister commenced her academic journey, the environment was markedly more tranquil, yet they remained committed to her intellectual growth. The level of intensity was not comparable. They facilitated her exploration of her interests at her own pace and did not impose the same rigorous regulations that I had experienced. The most notable contrast, however, was in the manner in which they celebrated achievements. When I attained a noteworthy accomplishment, it was often met with a nod of approval or a brief acknowledgement. My sister's accomplishments were met with a level of celebration and enthusiasm that seemed disproportionate to their significance. This discrepancy in the family's response to her achievements and my own created a sense of confusion and unease within me. It was challenging to comprehend why our parents exhibited such contrasting approaches to raising their children. I often felt scrutinized and observed my sister enjoying a more carefree upbringing, which made it difficult for me to feel positive about my own circumstances. However, I made a conscious effort not to harbor resentment towards her, recognizing that my sister was not responsible for the parenting decisions made by our parents. Despite these challenges, I remained committed to supporting my sister and being a positive influence in her life. In fact, we managed to maintain a good relationship and have always remained close. 6 years later, everything changed when my brother was born. My parents held a lavish celebration to mark the occasion, as they had finally become parents to a son. From the moment he was born, it was evident that he received preferential treatment. He was dressed in fancy clothes, given expensive toys, and had a room that was far more luxurious than what my sister and I had. Our parents went to great lengths to spoil him, purchasing the best baby gear, including a top-of-the-line stroller and a high-end crib. Notch strollers and an expensive crib were among the items our parents purchased for our younger brother. Our parents also took numerous photographs and videos of him reaching various developmental milestones. However, when it came to our sister and me, there was never the same level of attention. Even in everyday situations, our parents were more involved with our brother. They ensured he attended all scheduled medical appointments and provided consistent support for him, as well as for our sister and me. Our grandparents played a significant role in our lives after our brother's birth. This unequal treatment did not end with our brother's early years. It continued as he grew older. My brother was the primary influence on the familial structure and dynamics of our family, introducing challenges along the way. He was exempt from many of the household chores that my sister and I were expected to handle. Our parents often made allowances for him, excusing him from responsibilities that were an integral part of our daily routine. Birthdays and special occasions became grand celebrations for him, complete with elaborate parties and expensive presents. As a result, I and my sister felt left out on a regular basis. It should be noted that I had become accustomed to this treatment by this point. Time has passed, and this was the first instance in which my sister was exposed to the experiences I had endured as a child. We began to spend a considerable amount of time and vacation periods at our grandparents' residence, engaging in numerous afternoons of play in their backyard or sitting by the fireplace, listening to their narratives. Our grandparents became our confidants, with whom we shared our concerns, aspirations, and the challenges we faced at home. My grandmother would consistently reassure us that we were not alone. During my teenage years, I was labeled a rebel child by my parents due to my open espousal of divergent political beliefs. From my family, when I attempted to articulate my perspectives, my mother would typically become emotional and express concern that I was causing her distress if I expressed sadness or anger in her presence. My mother would become angry and tell me that she could not tolerate being around me when I was in such a state. She would then ignore me for the next few hours. As my sister grew older, she began to develop her own identity and also exhibited signs of mental health issues. My mother refused to seek treatment for her, claiming that she did not truly require it. However, when my sister experienced panic attacks or anxiety, my mother would become enraged and lash out at her. My mother would frequently express her frustration with my sister, claiming that she was a burden to the family. One particularly distressing incident occurred when my parents were verbally abusive towards my sister and me, stating that we were a disappointment and that we should never have been born. The intensity of their criticism left us feeling overwhelmed and distressed. We felt as though we were drowning in their harsh words, and we could no longer endure the situation. In response, my sister and I decided to leave home. We packed our belongings and headed straight to our grandparents' house. When our parents discovered our whereabouts, they immediately demanded that we return home. However, my grandmother intervened, expressing her disapproval of their actions. In response to this treatment, my grandfather asserted that he had provided us with food and shelter, and that this was all that we could reasonably expect from him. This assertion provoked a strong emotional reaction from my grandfather, who is usually calm and composed. He raised his voice for the first time and verbally attacked my father, denouncing his treatment of his children and threatening to involve the Child Protective Services, CPS, if he ever harmed us. This incident caused my parents significant distress, particularly given that my brother was still young and they were fearful of losing custody of him. My grandfather continued to defend us, insisting that we deserved better parents than our own. I recall that we deserved better parents than them. I distinctly remember him informing my mother that she was his daughter, yet he had never treated her in this manner. Consequently, how could she ever be cruel to me and my sister? My mother's face became red with embarrassment at the fight at our grandparents' place, which became a pivotal moment as it marked the first instance of someone standing up for us. This incident had a profound impact on our lives after that night at our grandparents' place. Our parents, particularly our father, became somewhat fearful after what our grandfather had threatened him with. Consequently, they moderated their behavior at home. My brother continued to receive preferential treatment, but the frequency of his reprimands and punishments diminished as he reached the age of 18. I was eager to pursue higher education, but my parents were strongly opposed to the idea. This led to a heated confrontation, during which my mother asserted that as a female, I should prioritize marriage and childbearing. She also suggested that men would be less interested in a woman with a strong academic background. My father joined in, ridiculing the idea of pursuing further education. This was a challenging experience to navigate, as I was confronted with the conflicting messages of independence and gender roles from my own parents. Despite their reservations, I decided to pursue a 4-year university degree. Upon entering university, I was awarded a scholarship as a result of being selected for their honors program. This meant that my parents were no longer required to contribute financially towards my education. However, they were displeased with my decision to defy their wishes. Nevertheless, I was unperturbed and began working part-time during my studies, while also saving money. This period of independent living in college proved to be a significant turning point in my life, as it taught me the essential skills of adulthood and provided me with a taste of the real world. It also required me to balance my studies with part-time employment. My time job in my personal life was not always straightforward, but it did contribute to my growth and development. My parents rarely called to check up on me, and eventually I graduated and secured a full-time position. I had saved up enough money for my part-time job, so I was able to move into a flat with roommates. My conversations with my parents became less frequent, almost to the point of non-existence. The distance between us was not just a result of my actions, my parents seemed content with the situation as well. On the occasions when birthdays and holidays occurred, we exchanged only the most perfunctory of greetings. There were periods when life presented me with significant challenges, including difficulties in my professional life and difficulties in my personal relationships. In such moments, I found myself instinctively reaching out to my family for support. However, each time I did so, I was met with the realization that they would not be able to provide the emotional support I needed. This realization led me to decide that I would no longer involve my parents in my life. My relationship with my parents was challenging. I soon came to perceive their involvement in my life as a hindrance. The only family member I maintained a consistent connection with was my sister. When she was preparing to attend university, my parents threatened to evict her if she pursued higher education at their residence. I offered to take her in, ensuring her opportunity to pursue her dreams without our parents' actions were a significant obstacle to her educational aspirations. Consequently, my sister relocated to my residence and commenced studies at a local community college. I was compelled to provide for both of us, and I was relentless in my efforts to ensure her financial security and academic success. Despite the challenges we faced, our bond grew stronger, and I found solace in the knowledge that, despite the difficulties with our parents, I could create a supportive and my parents encouraged me to provide a supportive environment for my sister to thrive, despite the challenges we faced. My brother, on the other hand, did not face the same struggles as my sister and me. My parents were proud to send him to college and had even saved up enough money to set up a college fund for him, ensuring he had the financial support needed to pursue higher education. My brother clearly had opportunities and privileges that we never had, and I couldn't help but feel a complex emotional state emerged, comprising feelings of joy for him and a hint of melancholy at the stark contrast between our experiences. Nevertheless, my sister and I continued to support each other, determined to overcome the challenges we had faced growing up. Throughout the ups and downs, our grandparents remained a constant source of support for me and my sister. They stayed in touch with us, visiting us whenever they could. A few years ago, our beloved grandmother passed away, and my sister and I rushed home to be there for our grandfather. This reunion marked the first time I saw our parents after such a long time. They acknowledged my presence with a simple nod, and I felt a sense of vulnerability. I wanted to burst into tears, but I didn't want my mother to scold me. Despite the demands of our hectic schedules, my sister and I made a conscious effort to be there for our grandfather after our grandmother's death. We spent more and more time with him, often sharing meals together and simply sitting on the porch, engrossed in conversations that ranged from childhood tales to more recent happenings. We dedicated entire afternoons to helping him with household chores or accompanying him to the local park. During one of our shared meals, my grandfather expressed his pride in me for taking care of my younger sister. His words caught me off guard and I was genuinely surprised by his acknowledgement. He went on to say that having a granddaughter like me made him proud and he believed I had the potential to change the world someday. In the afternoons, I assisted my grandfather with household chores or accompanied him to the local park. During one of our shared meals, he expressed his pride in me for taking care of my younger sister. His words caught me off guard, and I was genuinely surprised by his acknowledgement. He went on to say that having a granddaughter like me made him proud and that he believed I had the potential to change the world someday. Although I understood that they were just words, an overwhelming wave of emotions hit me, and tears welled up in my eyes. It had been a long time since someone had genuinely appreciated me. Grandpa, with a gentle pat on my head, assured me that my sister was fortunate to have an older sibling like me. The pride shining in his eyes is an image etched in my memory forever. Our brother, who has been the recipient of our parents' preferential treatment, has always maintained a distance from us. Perhaps he fears that our parents would cut him off as they did to us over the last several years or so. My sister and I occasionally talk to him or catch wind from relatives or cousins about the numerous things that our parents have done for him while ignoring our existence. They have provided him with several used cars. It is evident that our parents have always favored our brother over us. This may be due to the fear that they would cut him off, as they did to us over the past few years. My sister and I occasionally speak with him or receive information from relatives or cousins about the numerous ways in which our parents have supported him, while ignoring our existence. One example is the financial assistance they have provided for several used cars for my brother. Over the years, they paid for the deposit on a house so that my brother could move out and live on his own. Last year, they paid for my brother to go to New York City with his girlfriend so that he could relax, as he was reportedly working too hard. Recently, my sister, who had been dating her college sweetheart Robert, 29, got engaged. I was filled with immense joy upon hearing the news and could not be happier for her. Her and Robert make a wonderful couple, and the love they share is evident in every smile and glance they exchange. The proposal was nothing short of magical, and my sister was on cloud nine, showcasing the beautiful ring that adorned her finger to anyone who would spare a moment to share in her happiness. She had put up pictures of her proposal on social media, which is how my relatives found out and called to congratulate her. We were subsequently informed of the happy event by our parents, who had been inundated with calls and messages from them. This was somewhat surprising, given that they had previously shown little interest in our lives. We were curious as to why they had suddenly become so eager to be part of our happiness, given that they had kept their distance for so long. The messages we received were a mixed bag of emotions. We experienced a range of emotions, including shock, confusion, and even a hint of annoyance. Why now? Why did they decide to jump in just when we were having a happy moment, caught off guard by this unexpected flood of attention? My sister and I exchanged puzzled looks when my sister finally answered our mother's call. Mom went on about how thrilled she was to hear about the engagement. My sister, being polite, said her thank you. Then came the tricky part. The mother then proceeded to inquire about the identity of the prospective groom, Robert, and expressed a desire to meet him immediately. Given the circumstances, my sister attempted to circumvent the issue by citing her hectic schedule, which was currently occupied with wedding preparations. However, my father, who was present with my mother, interjected and asserted that they deserved to meet the man she was planning to spend the rest of her life with. With their persuasive arguments, my sister eventually relented. She was reluctant to meet our parents alone, so she proposed that she would bring me along for the meeting. Our parents agreed, though this was somewhat unexpected. We decided to proceed with the meeting on the appointed day. We arrived at our parents' place with trepidation, anticipating a tense atmosphere. Upon arrival, our parents greeted us with forced smiles, attempting to appear as though everything was normal. Mom smiled more warmly at Robert, however, and we all sat down to talk. The atmosphere was noticeably tense, particularly given how our parents were attempting to act like one happy family in front of Robert. It is likely that Robert was aware of the full story, given that he dated my sister throughout college and has been with her for a considerable length of time. Given the length of their relationship, the atmosphere was palpably tense, and Robert, sensing this, attempted to maintain a light-hearted tone. He shared some details about himself, his occupation, and his interests in an effort to alleviate the awkwardness. Our conversation then shifted to my sister and Robert's upcoming nuptials. This is where the conversation took an intriguing turn. Our parents began to subtly hint about how wonderful it would be for Dad to walk my sister down the aisle and Mom to be an integral part of her ceremony as well. My sister and I looked at them in confusion. Dad continued to say how he wanted us to present a united front in front of our relatives to avoid any family embarrassment. Mom nodded in agreement, reiterating that they did not want Robert's family to think that it was my father's intention to walk my sister down the aisle, while my mother would be an integral part of her ceremony. My sister and I looked at them in confusion. My father continued to say that he wanted us to present a united front in front of our relatives to avoid any family embarrassment. My mother nodded in agreement and reiterated that they did not want Robert's family to think that my sister and I were perplexed by their actions. They had no biological parents, and thus, they wanted to be involved in the wedding. My sister and I looked at each other, and it was clear that they had called us here for their own agenda. They were afraid that my sister would not invite them to the wedding and did not want their relatives to question them. This would harm their social status. I shook my head in disbelief, realizing their true motives. My sister graciously thanked them for their suggestions but firmly asserted that she had already made up her mind about who was going to walk her down the aisle. My father inquired curiously who else she could have chosen for such an important role in her wedding. My sister then revealed that my grandfather would be walking her down the aisle. Our parents seemed taken aback. My sister's announcement was met with a mixture of emotions, ranging from anticipation to anger. It was difficult for them to comprehend that their daughter had chosen our grandfather over them for such a significant role. This is how the conversation proceeded. "Mom, but sweetheart, it's tradition for a father to walk his daughter down the aisle. You can't break tradition." "Sister, well, Mom, I am not concerned with breaking traditions. I would like my grandfather to be a part of this special moment. He has been there for us when you both forgot that you had daughters. He can only attend as a guest at the wedding like any other relative. You cannot simply sideline us like this. I am your father, and I am hearing this." I could not handle my laughter any longer and started laughing loudly. Everyone was quite startled. In response to my reaction, I fixed my gaze on my father's face and informed him that he and my mother had neglected their parental responsibilities towards us for many years. Consequently, they had no right to demand my sister to listen to them. The truth of this statement struck home, and our parents became enraged and embarrassed. They began to yell at me and my sister, insisting that we were going to destroy their reputation. My sister and I were not concerned about our parents' reputation. My sister stood her ground, asserting that they could not suddenly claim a parental role when they had neglected us for so long. I added that their actions had consequences, and they could not rewrite the past. My sister clarified that our parents would have a limited role at the wedding, just like any other guest. The meeting concluded with the understanding that our parents would have a limited role at the wedding, much like any other guest. However, the atmosphere was noticeably tense, and my sister's resolve was evident as we departed. I was simultaneously impressed by her courage and disheartened by our parents' inability to grasp the consequences of their past actions. Since that meeting, we have been subjected to relentless criticism and harassment. Our parents and other relatives have accused us of being selfish and cruel for not allowing our father to walk my sister down the aisle. They have also criticized Ida for telling our parents the truth and supporting my sister's decision to let Grandpa walk her down the aisle. Update 1. It has been a few hours since I posted the story, and the support has been overwhelming. Many people have been asking about our situation. Grandpa has been informed of the engagement by my sister, who has also received his warm congratulations. However, he is still unaware of my sister's intention to ask him to walk her down the aisle. We intend to inform him of this when we are able to see his reaction. We plan to visit him this coming weekend. Our parents have continued to send us messages expressing their anger. Furthermore, the father has attempted to contact Robert via Facebook, where he sent him a lengthy message expressing his disapproval of my sister's actions. He continued to write that my sister had no right to ask her grandfather, as it is traditionally the father who fulfills this role. He also threatened Robert, stating that if he allowed my sister to proceed, he and my mother would not attend the wedding. He then informed Robert and his mother that they would not be attending the wedding. Robert responded that his fiancée would do as she pleased and that he would support her. He also stated that it was up to his father to decide whether or not to attend the wedding. Robert's response was clear and assertive, which likely surprised and upset his father. I imagine that his father's reaction was one of shock and disbelief. Upon observing his facial expression, I was prompted to laugh. I will provide an update next when we visit our grandfather this weekend. I have informed my sister and I drove down to our grandfather's residence this weekend. We were filled with excitement to share the news with him. My sister finally informed him that she had something important to tell him. He gazed at us, his eyes filled with curiosity and warmth. My sister then proceeded to inform him that she wished for him to act as her maid of honor on her wedding day. She went on to say that he was the one who had always been there for them and that she could not imagine anyone else doing it. Grandpa's eyes began to well up with tears, and he pulled my sister into a tight hug. His voice was choked with emotions as he expressed his gratitude for my sister's request, looking at my grandfather. I also became teary-eyed, and we shared a group hug. Grandpa expressed his gratitude to my sister, reiterating that it was a gesture that greatly meant to him. We reassured him that it was the least we could do to reciprocate the love and support he had consistently demonstrated over the years. We then proceeded to elucidate the manner in which we had conveyed the news to our parents. The way they had reacted led us to anticipate that we were concerned that our parents might take their anger out on him, but Grandpa reassured us that he could handle our mother and that nothing would stop him from walking my sister down the aisle. My sister sighed in relief, and we spent the evening assisting our grandfather with various tasks around the house. As my sister's wedding day approaches, we have been extensively involved in the planning process, from selecting the ideal theme to coordinating the final details. This process has reflected her personality, from the initial decision-making stages, such as selecting the wedding theme, to the finalization of the wedding dress and meticulous arrangement of the seating for the guests. It is now only a matter of days before my sister marries the love of her life. Update 3: It has been 3 months since my last update. I apologize for the delay, but I have been preoccupied with other commitments. The wedding day arrived, and it was everything my sister had dreamed of and more. The event was everything my sister had dreamed of and more. The venue was as we had anticipated, and the guests filled the seats. There was an air of joy and anticipation surrounding us. There was, however, a noticeable absence in the ceremony: our parents. In the wake of our decision to limit their role at the wedding, they chose not to attend. This was a decision we respected. Overall, the ceremony was bittersweet. I was acutely aware that they were absent from what was, for my sister, a significant event in her life. The ceremony itself was magical. My sister, radiant in her wedding dress, stood with Grandpa by her side. The love and pride in his eyes were palpable as they walked down the aisle together. The decision to have Grandpa play this pivotal role had been the right one, and the joy it brought was evident. The atmosphere was characterized by warmth, laughter, and the shared happiness of all those present. My sister and Robert exchanged vows, promising a lifetime of love and companionship. The celebration continued into the night with dancing, laughter, and heartfelt toasts. Life has been going smoothly for us since the wedding. My sister and I have made the conscious decision to block our parents so that they cannot reach out to us with their negativity and drama. We still regularly visit our grandfather whenever we can. The journey has not been easy, but as we move forward, our focus remains on building a life filled with positivity and surrounded by those who genuinely care. Hopefully, this is my last update.